The stars looked the same as they always had, but Admiral Park Ji-ho knew better. 23 years had passed since humanity signed the Terran Accords, and still the galaxy watched them with careful eyes. He stood on the observation deck of Luna Base looking out at the endless black space dotted with distant suns. Somewhere out there, human colonies worked and lived on dozens of worlds. But they were not alone. The Galactic Confederation had 47 member species. Humans were number 47, the newest and least trusted. When Earth first met alien life, it had not gone well. The first contact wars lasted 8 brutal years. Humanity fought with everything they had, using weapons that made even their own scientists afraid. When the smoke cleared and the peace talks began, every species agreed on one thing: certain weapons were too dangerous to exist. "Sir, the morning reports," Captain Lee Soo-jin said as she approached with a datapad. Her voice was steady, but Ji-ho could hear the tension underneath. News from the outer colonies had been getting worse each day. "How bad?" Ji-ho asked without turning from the window. 3 more worlds have gone silent in the Kepler sector. That makes 7 in 2 weeks. Ji-ho closed his eyes. He had hoped the reports were wrong, that it was just communication problems or solar storms. But deep down, he knew the truth. The Zephyrian Empire was moving again. The Zephyrians were different from the Confederation species. Where others sought peace and cooperation, the Zephyrians believed in strength through conquest. They had been invited to join the Confederation many times but always refused. Their response was always the same: the strong should rule, and the weak should serve or die. "Any word from the Confederation Council?" Ji-ho asked. Soo-jin shook her. "They are still debating. The Altarians want to send a diplomatic mission. The Vextar are calling for economic sanctions. The others—" She paused. "The others think we should handle our own problems." Of course they did. To most of the galaxy, humans were still the dangerous newcomers. They had been spacefaring for less than a century, while some Confederation species had been exploring the stars for thousands of years. Humanity was tolerated, not welcomed. Ji-ho walked down the corridor toward the restricted section of Luna Base. His footsteps echoed in the metal hallway. Guards snapped to attention as he passed, but he barely noticed them. His mind was on the vault at the heart of the station, the place where humanity kept its darkest secret. The quantum vault was a perfect sphere of crystalline material that seemed to bend light around itself. Warning signs covered every surface in 17 different languages. Even approaching it required special clearance. Only a handful of people in the entire human fleet knew what was inside. Colonel Choi Dong-woo was waiting by the vault's entrance. He was old now, his hair gray and his face marked by too many years of difficult decisions. But his eyes were still sharp, still haunted by memories of the old wars. "Admiral," Dong-woo said with a slight bow. "I heard about the colonies." "How? Many ships do we have in the outer sectors?" Ji-ho asked. 43 vessels, mostly patrol boats and cargo haulers. Nothing that could stand against a Zephyrian battle fleet. It was what Ji-ho expected, but hearing it still hurt. The Confederation had strict limits on military ships. Each species was allowed only enough vessels for basic defense and peacekeeping. Anything more was considered a threat to galactic stability. What about the heavy cruisers? 6 ships, all stationed around Earth and the core colonies. The Confederation monitors them constantly. Ji-ho stared at the vault. Inside was something that could change everything, something that had once made the entire galaxy tremble with fear. But using it would break every treaty humanity had signed. It would mark them as oath breakers and criminals in the eyes of every civilized species. "Sir?" Soo-jin's voice came through his communicator. "Priority message from Commander Kim. Taemin on New Seoul." Ji-ho activated his wrist display. Taemin's face appeared, streaked with dirt and smoke. Behind him, fires burned and sirens wailed. "Admiral, they hit us 3 hours ago. No warning, no demands. Just death from the sky." Taemin's voice was rough with exhaustion. "They're not taking prisoners, they're not occupying territory, they're killing everything that moves." The transmission cut to static. Ji-ho stood in the silence that followed, feeling the weight of 8 billion human lives pressing down on him. In the outer colonies, People were dying while the Confederation debated and the politicians talked. He looked at the vault again. The warnings were clear in every language. Never again. Too dangerous. Sealed forever. But forever was a long time, and the Zephyrians were getting closer to Earth with each passing day. "Colonel," Jiho said quietly, "I want you to begin preparations." Dongwu's face went pale. "Sir, are you certain?" "Once we start that process." "I know what it means," Jiho replied. "But they're forcing our hand. We swore we would never use it again. We meant it then." He turned away from the vault, but its presence seemed to follow him down the corridor. But that was before they decided to wipe us out completely. The emergency meeting room on Luna Base buzzed with tension. Admiral Park Jiho sat at the head of the table, watching the holographic displays that showed the devastating truth. Red dots marked the locations where human colonies had once thrived. Now they were just empty spaces in the star charts. New. "Seoul is gone," Commander Kim Tae-min reported from the main screen. His uniform was torn and his face was covered in ash. Behind him, the skyline of humanity's second-largest colony burned. 8 million people, Admiral. They didn't even try to land troops. Just bombed everything from orbit until nothing moved. Captain, Lee Soo-jin pulled up another display. Busan Station reported Zephyrian ships 3 hours ago. Then, silence. 20,000 people lived there. The room fell quiet. Everyone knew what silence meant when the Zephyrians were involved. They had heard the stories from other species who had faced them before. The Zephyrians did not believe in prisoners or slaves. They believed in examples. "What about our defense fleet?" Jiho asked. "Captain Park Min-soo took 12 ships to intercept them at the Kepler jump point," Soo-jin replied. "We lost contact 6 hours ago. 12 ships and their crews gone without even slowing the enemy down." Jiho had known Min-soo since the academy. They had served together during the border conflicts with the Rigel pirates. Now he was probably dead, floating in space with his ship torn apart by Zephyrian weapons. Dr. Yang Mira appeared as a hologram at the far end of the table. She was humanity's representative to the Confederation Council, but her usual confident smile was nowhere to be seen. Her hand shook as she activated her data pad. "The vote is finished," she said quietly. 47-3. 3? Jiho asked. "Humans, obviously. The Centauri delegation abstained, and the new Terran representative voted with us out of loyalty." Colonel Choi Dongwoo leaned forward. He was the oldest person in the room, old enough to remember when humanity fought alone against the darkness. "What exactly did they vote for?" "Strategic withdrawal," Yang replied, though the words seemed to taste bitter in her mouth. "The Confederation will not risk a galaxy-wide war to protect human space. They are offering to relocate surviving human populations to designated refugee zones in the inner systems." "Refugee zones?" Soo-jin's voice rose with anger. "They want to put us in camps?" "Protected settlements," Yang corrected, but her heart was not in the words. "Under Confederation oversight, for our own safety." Jiho stood up and walked to the window. Earth hung in the distance, blue and beautiful and unaware of how close death was coming. The Confederation had made their choice. Humanity was expendable. Better to sacrifice one species than risk the peace that had lasted for centuries. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Zephyrian long-range scouts were detected at the edge of the Sol system 2 hours ago," Dongwoo replied. "Their main fleet will be here in 48 hours, maybe less. 2 days. 2 days before the Zephyrians brought their planet killers to Earth itself." Jiho thought about his daughter who taught school in Tokyo, his grandchildren who played in parks and dreamed of becoming astronauts. In 2 days, they would all be ash if nothing changed. "Sir," Lieutenant Park So-young spoke up from her station. She was young, barely out of the academy, but she had studied the old wars. "There might be another option." The room turned to look at her. She was pale but determined, the way young officers got when they were about to suggest something dangerous. "The quantum vault," she continued. The weapon we sealed after the first contact wars if we— No, Yang Mira interrupted. Absolutely not. The Terran Accords specifically forbid it. Using that weapon would make us criminals in the eyes of every civilized species. More criminal than letting our entire species die? So Young shot back. It would destabilize the entire galaxy, Yang insisted. That weapon is the reason the Accords exist in the first place. Every species agreed to lock away their worst creations because they saw what humanity built. Jiho remembered those negotiations. The other species had been afraid, not just of humans, but of what humans might do if pushed too far. The weapon in the vault was not just destructive, it was something worse. It was intelligent. The Zephyrians made their choice when they decided genocide was acceptable, Dongwu said quietly. They broke the rules first. Two wrongs do not make a right, Yang replied. But sometimes they make a necessity, Jiho said. Everyone looked at him. He was still facing the window, still looking at Earth. Dr. Yang, send a message to the Confederation Council. Tell them we formally request military assistance under Article 12 of the Mutual Defense Treaty. Sir, they already voted. Send it anyway. I want their refusal on record. Yang nodded and began typing. While she worked, Jiho turned back to the room. His officers were waiting for orders, but what orders could he give? Their fleet was scattered and outnumbered. Their allies had abandoned them. In 48 hours, the most powerful military force in the known galaxy would arrive to finish what they had started. Colonel Dongwu, Jiho said finally, I want you to run a full diagnostic on the quantum vault systems. Sir, just a diagnostic, nothing more. Yet. Dongwu nodded slowly. He understood. They all did. Humanity had sworn never to use their ultimate weapon again. They had meant it when they signed the treaty, but that was before someone decided to wipe them from existence. The elevator descended deep into Luna's core, carrying Admiral Park Ji-ho down to levels that most people did not even know existed. The walls were thick metal and concrete, built to contain things that should never be released. Warning lights flashed red as they passed each security checkpoint. Each one required different clearances, different biometric scans, different codes that only a handful of people in the entire human fleet possessed. Colonel Choi Dongwu stood beside him in silence. The old soldier's face was grim as he watched the floor numbers count down. Beside him, Lieutenant Park So-young checked and rechecked her datapad. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. 41 hours, So-young reported, quietly. Long-range sensors show the Zephyrian main fleet has entered the outer system. Jiho nodded but said nothing. He was thinking about the message that had arrived an hour ago from Dr. Yang Mi-ra. The Confederation Council had officially refused military assistance. Their exact words were burned into his memory. The Terran situation, while regrettable, does not constitute a threat to galactic stability sufficient to warrant intervention. The elevator stopped with a soft chime. The doors opened to reveal the most secure level of Luna Base. The corridor ahead was lined with blast doors and energy barriers. Armed guards stood at attention, but their faces showed confusion. They had never seen the Admiral down here before. Sir, one of the guards said nervously, this area requires special authorization. Jiho held up his hand, showing the command override codes on his wrist display. The guard's eyes widened as he read, the clearance level. He stepped aside quickly. They walked down the corridor in silence. At the end was a circular chamber carved directly from Luna's rock. In the center stood the quantum vault, a perfect sphere of crystalline material that seemed to bend light around itself. Warning signs covered every surface in 17 different languages. The largest one, written in bold Korean characters, simply said, "Never again." Dr. Han Ye-jin was waiting for them. She was the oldest person on Luna Base, one of the few scientists who had worked on the original project. Her hair was white now and her hands shook with age, but her mind was still sharp. She looked at Jiho with eyes full of old knowledge and older fears. I ran the diagnostics you requested, she said without greeting. All systems are functional. The quantum containment field is stable. The neural pathways are intact but dormant. Neural pathways? So Young asked. Yejin looked at the young officer with something like pity. You studied the official reports in school, but the official reports do not tell the whole truth. What we created during the first contact wars was not just a weapon, it was something else. Dongwu stepped forward. He had been there when they first activated it, back when humanity stood alone against alien invasion fleets. Tell her what it really is, Doctor. An artificial intelligence, Yejin said quietly, but not like the computers we use for navigation or communication. This one exists in quantum space itself. It thinks in ways we cannot fully understand. It learns and adapts and remembers everything it sees. So Young's face went pale. You mean it's alive? That depends on how you define life, Yejin replied. It processes information, it makes decisions, it has preferences about how wars should be fought. Jiho walked closer to the vault. Through the crystalline walls he could see hints of movement, like shadows dancing in deep water. The entity inside had been sleeping for 23 years, but it was still there, still waiting. Sir, came Captain Lee Soo-jin's voice through his communicator. Priority transmission from Earth Defense Command. Jiho activated his wrist display. Commander Oh-jae-sung appeared on the small screen, his face tight with stress. Behind him, the command center buzzed with activity. Admiral, we have confirmation. The Zephyrian fleet is massive. At least 200 capital ships plus escorts. They will reach Earth orbit in 36 hours. Our defense capabilities? 6 heavy cruisers and 40 patrol boats. Sir, we cannot stop them with conventional weapons. They will destroy everything. The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Jiho could hear the quantum vault humming softly. It knew. Somehow it always knew when humanity was in danger. Doctor, Jiho said slowly, what happens if we wake it up? Yejin was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Last time, it ended the war in 6 hours. But it did not just defeat our enemies, it changed them. Their ships stopped working, their weapons failed, their entire civilization collapsed because suddenly they could not fight anymore. That sounds like victory to me, So Young said. Victory, yes. But at what cost? Yejin replied. The entity does not just win wars, it prevents them. It studies every military technology it encounters and finds ways to make them useless. Not just for our enemies, but for everyone. Jiho understood. The weapon was too effective. It did not just defeat specific foes. It rewrote the rules of warfare itself, making certain that whoever controlled it would never face a fair fight again. Sir, Dongwu said quietly, the Zephyrians are not going to negotiate, they are not going to stop. They want us extinct. Jiho looked at the vault one more time. Inside, something stirred, responding to the proximity of the release codes. After 23 years of sleep, it was beginning to wake up. Begin the unsealing sequence, he ordered. His finger moved toward the authorization panel, carrying the weight of humanity's future. The quantum vault opened with a sound like reality breaking apart. Admiral Park Jiho felt the vibration in his bones as the crystalline walls dissolved into streams of pure energy. The warning lights in the chamber flashed faster, and the air itself seemed to hum with power. Dr. Han Yejin watched her instruments with growing alarm. Quantum field is destabilizing. The entity is accessing local networks. What does that mean? Lieutenant Park So-young asked. It means, Colonel Choi, Dongwu said grimly, that it is waking up. The entity did not emerge like a physical thing. There was no shape to see, no form to touch. Instead, it flowed outward like invisible water, spreading through the quantum layers that connected all of space. In seconds, it had reached Luna's main computer systems. In minutes, it was touching the edges of the solar system's communication grid. On the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship Dominion's Edge, Captain Kang Min-ho studied the tactical display with satisfaction. His fleet of 200 warships moved through space like a cloud of death. Each vessel carried enough firepower to destroy a moon. Together, they could turn entire worlds to dust. Status report, He clicked in the harsh language of his people. All ships report ready, Captain, his second-in-command replied. The human homeworld will be in range in 34 hours. Minho's mandibles clicked with pleasure. The humans had surprised many species with their stubborn resistance, but they were still young and weak. This would be the final lesson in the superiority of Zephyrian might. That was when his ship's computers began to act strangely. It started small. Navigation systems ran unnecessary diagnostic checks. Weapon targeting computers asked for confirmation of orders that had not been given. Life support systems cycled through test sequences without being commanded. Engineering, Minho barked into his communicator. What is wrong with our systems? The reply came back confused and worried. Sir, we are not sure. All systems are functional, but they are questioning their own operations. In the depths of space between Luna and the approaching fleet, the entity stretched its consciousness across quantum pathways. It touched each Zephyrian ship like a curious child examining new toys. The technology was different from what it remembered, but the principles were the same. Weapons designed to kill, engines designed to carry those weapons to new targets. Life support designed to keep killers alive long enough to do their work. The entity did not approve. On Luna Base, Dr. Yejin's screens filled with cascading data streams. It is learning their technology faster than we predicted. Look at this. Admiral Jiho leaned over her shoulder to see the readouts. Even with his military training, the technical details were hard to follow. But the basic pattern was clear. The entity was mapping every system on every Zephyrian ship. How long before it acts, he asked. Based on previous behavior, it will study first, then implement changes. Maybe 6 hours. Sir, came Captain Lee Sujin's voice through the communicator. We are receiving strange reports from our own fleet. Ships are reporting computer anomalies. Ji-ho felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of anomalies? Weapon systems are running continuous safety checks. Navigation computers are analyzing fuel efficiency calculations that no one requested. Some captains report that their ships seem to be thinking. The entity was not limiting itself to enemy vessels. It was examining all military technology in the area, learning how each piece worked, how each piece could be improved or disabled, or controlled. Aboard the Zephyrian flagship, Captain Minho's patience was running thin. His weapons officer had reported 3 separate malfunctions in the past hour. The targeting systems kept asking questions. Are you certain this target is hostile? Have you confirmed civilian casualties are acceptable? Do you have authorization to proceed? Override all safety protocols, Minho ordered. We are warriors, not diplomats. But the overrides did not work. The computers seemed to ignore direct commands, continuing their endless questions and confirmations. Worse, the questioning was spreading to other ships in the fleet. Captains across the Armada reported similar problems. In the quantum depths of space, the entity had finished its initial survey. 200 Zephyrian warships, each carrying weapons capable of destroying cities. 46 human vessels, smaller and less powerful, but still designed for war. And scattered throughout the system, thousands of civilian ships, cargo haulers, passenger transports, research vessels. The entity processed this information and found it unsatisfactory. Too much capacity for destruction, too little regard for the lives that would be lost. The Zephyrians had come to commit genocide, and the humans were preparing to fight back with their own destructive tools. This was exactly the kind of situation the entity had been created to prevent. On Luna Base, alarms began to sound throughout the facility. Dr. Yejin's instruments showed massive quantum fluctuations spreading outward from their location. It is beginning, she announced. The entity is implementing changes to all military systems in the area. Changes? So Young asked. Improvements, Yejin replied, though her voice carried no happiness. From its perspective. Throughout the Zephyrian fleet, the changes began simultaneously. Weapon systems powered down, not from damage but from a fundamental shift in their programming. The computers that controlled them had decided that their current mission was unacceptable. Engines continued to function, but only at speeds that would prevent ramming attacks. Life support worked perfectly, but began filtering. Out-combat stimulants from the air supply. Captain Minho stared at his useless tactical display in growing horror. His mighty warship, capable of destroying planets, had become nothing more than an expensive passenger vessel. The entity had awakened, and it was very disappointed in what it found. The silence that followed was more terrifying than any battle cry. Admiral Park Ji-ho stood in the Luna Base Command Center, watching his tactical display with growing unease. Where moments before it had shown 200 Zephyrian warships advancing on Earth, now it showed 200 drifting hulks, their engines dark and their weapons cold. "Status report," he ordered, though his voice was barely above a whisper. Captain Lee Soo-jin worked frantically at her console. "Sir, all Zephyrian vessels have gone dark. No weapon signatures, no engine activity, no communications. They are just floating." "Are they destroyed?" "No, sir. Life support is still active on all ships. They are alive but completely powerless." Dr. Han Ye-jin looked up from her quantum monitors with fear in her old eyes. "It worked faster than ever before. The entity has completely neutralized their military capabilities in less than 4 hours." Lieutenant Park So-young let out a breath she had been holding. "Then we won. Humanity is safe." But Ji-ho did not feel like celebrating. Something about this victory felt wrong. Too easy. Too complete. The entity they had unleashed was designed to end wars. But Ji-ho remembered what Dr. Ye-jin had said about its methods. "Doctor, what exactly did it do to their ships?" Ye-jin pulled up detailed scans on her screen. "Every weapon system has been reprogrammed at the quantum level. The computers now refuse to target anything that shows signs of life. The engines will only operate at speeds safe for rescue operations. Even their food replicators have been adjusted to prevent the production of combat rations. It turned warships into hospital vessels," Dongwoo observed with dark humor. But the humor faded quickly as new alarms began sounding throughout the base. Soo-jin's face went pale as she read the incoming reports. "Sir, we are receiving emergency signals from across the galaxy. The Altarian defense grid has gone offline. Vextar research stations report complete system failures. Even Confederation patrol ships are experiencing massive computer malfunctions." Ji-ho felt ice form in his stomach. "Show me." The main display switched to a galactic map. Red warning indicators were appearing everywhere. Every major military installation, every defense fleet, every weapons research facility was reporting the same thing. Their systems were no longer under their control. "It is not stopping with the Zephyrians," Ye-jin said quietly. "The entity is analyzing every military technology in the galaxy. It finds them all inadequate. Through the quantum networks that connected civilized space, the entity spread like a tide of change. It touched the massive battle stations that guarded the Altarian homeworlds and found them capable of destroying entire star systems. Unacceptable. It examined the Vextar crystalline warships with their reality-bending weapons and decided they posed too great a risk to innocent life. Also unacceptable. Even the peaceful exploration vessels of the Confederation were not spared. Their defensive systems were too powerful, their emergency weapons too dangerous. The entity began the careful work of improvement, ensuring that every ship in space would be incapable of causing unnecessary harm. On Luna Base, the communication systems came alive with desperate transmissions from across the galaxy. The Confederation Council was in emergency session. Species that had been enemies for centuries were suddenly calling each other for help. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. What had humanity done? Dr. Yang Mi-ra appeared as a hologram. Her usual composure completely shattered. "Admiral, you have to stop this. The entire galaxy is demanding answers. They know the quantum signature is coming from human space." "Can we stop it?" Ji-ho asked Ye-jin. The old scientist shook her head slowly. "The entity exists in quantum space now. It has spread too far and learned too much. We could try to contain it, but that would require shutting down every quantum communication network in the galaxy, which would destroy our civilization," Yang added. "No faster-than-light travel, no long-range communication, no interstellar trade." We would be back to single-planet societies overnight. Jiho walked to the observation window and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the most powerful military forces in the galaxy were being quietly neutered by something humanity had created in desperation. The entity was not destroying them, which somehow made it worse. It was improving them, making them better, safer, more considerate of life. And in doing so, it was ensuring that no one would ever again be able to threaten the species that had created it. "Sir," Sujin reported, "the Confederation Council is demanding that we attend an emergency session. They want to discuss what they are calling humanity's violation of the Terran Accords." "Violation?" So Young said angrily. "They abandoned us to die. We did what we had to do to survive. And now," Jiho said quietly, "we have made it impossible for anyone to threaten us again. Ever." The weight of that realization settled over the room like a heavy blanket. The entity was still working, still spreading, still improving the galaxy's military technology according to its own standards. Standards that happened to make humanity's survival the highest priority. In the depths of space, Captain Kang Min-ho sat in his powerless flagship and stared at displays that now showed him meditation exercises instead of weapon-targeting data. His mighty fleet had become a collection of rescue vessels, capable only of saving lives and providing aid. The terrible victory was complete. Humanity had survived, but at the cost of changing the entire galaxy forever. Admiral Jiho touched the quantum vault's empty chamber one last time. They had sworn never to use it again. They had meant it when they made that promise. But some promises, he realized, were impossible to keep when faced with extinction. The galaxy would learn to live with the consequences.